The National Desk, America's News, now.
Devastating floods while the heat wave continues. Another natural disaster strikes in the center of America. Days away from the first presidential debate of the 2024 election season, the latest numbers of where the youngest voters are leaning. Then President Joe Biden has a plan to help boost home sales across the country, but could hidden costs of home ownership be weighing down the market? This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. As we come on the air, the Rapidan Dam in the southern Minnesota area is in imminent danger of failing, putting thousands of residents of Blue Earth County, Minnesota, on evacuation alert tonight. No order has been given yet, as officials don't know if the dam will hold or not. It comes as the southern part of Minnesota has been dealing with significant flooding that has also been impacting Iowa and South Dakota, rather. The Big Sioux River crested overnight hours earlier and higher than officials expected. Crews were able to build a levee to divert potentially more catastrophic water flows. The Missouri, Vermilion, and James rivers are also at crest levels. Swift water rescue teams have been getting families to safety as several homes have been destroyed. Both Iowa and South Dakota governors have made disaster declarations requesting federal aid for cleanup. Meanwhile, the heat wave gripping the United States continues. Roughly 62 million of you out there across 19 states are under some kind of heat alert today. The Central Plains, Southeast, and Southwest have the highest temperatures today. Tomorrow, elevated temperatures could return to the Northeast before cooling later this week. Travis Eugene Posey, the man accused of a deadly mass shooting in an Arkansas grocery store on Friday, will go before the court tomorrow afternoon. It was believed he would be arraigned today. No reason has been given for the delay. Authorities say the 44-year-old killed 4 shoppers and injured 9 others, including 2 police officers, before being shot and taken into custody on Friday. Louisiana's new law requiring classrooms to display the 10 Commandments is being challenged in court. The ACLU, joined by other civil liberties groups, seeking to block the law, saying it defies the separation of church and state. While separation of church and state is not formally written into the Constitution, the Supreme Court in 1980 ruled a similar law in Kentucky to be unconstitutional. Louisiana lawmakers say the law has no religious application and was made for historical purposes. This week, all eyes will be on the pivotal debate between the former and current president, vying for voters young to old. Young Americans in particular posing a challenge this year, less likely to vote in November when compared to their elders. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, swings in the key voting bloc could make or break both campaigns.
What's next for America?
The president is now on TikTok. It's my honor.
Both the president and former president have a presence on TikTok, presumably because it's where the young people are. For Biden, Gen Z represents a group highly critical of his handling of the Israel-Hamas war. Losing a sliver of those voters in a swing state could decide the White House. A new CBS YouGov poll focuses on the coveted under 30 voting bloc. Joe Biden is favored among young people, 61 to 38 over Donald Trump. But pocketbook issues like the economy and inflation outpace the war for the under 30 voters' top priorities, with 43% of them saying Biden's policies have hurt them financially. Young voters also are overwhelmingly in favor of Biden canceling student loan debt, but it's unknown if that will even motivate them to vote.
Student loans. He's forgiven $144 billion in student loans. Only 36% of student debt holders like it. I mean, if you can't win the people you're pandering to, and yet I read in the polls, he pulled ahead this week. Explain that to me.
Biden's age is more of a factor in the vote compared to Trump's in the CBS poll. The president and his team have tried to change the narrative on his mental fitness concerns.
Joe Biden doesn't have any concerns about his mental fitness, nor do I. I've spent an incredible amount of time with Joe Biden. That's just the fade that the other side is pushing.
A big question from the poll is if young people will even care enough to vote. Just 34% are thinking a lot about the presidential race, compared to 74% of voters over 65.
When we watch this campaign going forward, can the candidates not just motivate them, but also inform them about what they would do so that they can make ostensibly a more informed choice?
And almost half of voters under 30 feel like both Trump and Biden just don't understand them. And just 60% say they'll definitely vote even if they don't like either man, a huge issue for turnout. That's compared to about 90% of older people saying they'll still vote. Amira?
And Matt, how does the polling compare to the previous election cycle? Is it hugely different?
Well, Biden's 61% support is in line with 2020, but if less young people are motivated to turn out or are turned off by things like the Israel-Hamas war, those could be those key swing state votes that determine the electoral count. Amira?
Yeah, we know those states will make all the difference. Live from Washington, D.C., Matt Gelka, thank you as always. And tonight, after being stuck for nearly 3 months, the cargo ship Dali has departed Baltimore, headed for Norfolk, Virginia. While there, containers on the 984-foot ship will be removed and undergo repairs. This coming as we learn crew members on the ship are now allowed to head home after the Dali lost power in March and crashed into a supporting beam of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, causing it to collapse and kill 6 construction workers. The Supreme Court is jumping into the fight over transgender rights. Today, the High Court agreeing to hear an appeal from the Biden administration seeking to block state bans on gender-affirming care. The specific case coming before the High Court involves a Tennessee law that restricts transgender minors from receiving hormone therapy and puberty blockers. At least 25 states have laws restricting or banning gender-affirming care for minors. Facing a possible ban in the United States by this time next year, TikTok is now navigating more legal trouble over potentially violating child privacy law. The Department of Justice is now looking into the issue. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has a closer look at the allegations.
One of the most popular social media apps is in more hot water with government regulators. The Federal Trade Commission referring a complaint to the Department of Justice against TikTok and its Chinese parent company ByteDance after it says it found reason to believe they are violating or are about to violate the law. Specifically, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which in part requires sites to obtain verifiable parental consent prior to collecting, using, or disclosing personal information from children.
They can then make their feeds even more powerful, even more addictive, and it can send children down dark rabbit holes of not only misinformation, but content that is not good for their physical and mental health.
TikTok disputes the allegations, saying, "We've been working with the FTC for more than a year to address its concerns. We're disappointed the agency is pursuing litigation instead of continuing to work with us on a reasonable solution. And we're proud of and remain deeply committed to the work we've done to protect children, and we will continue to update and improve our product." This is far from the first time the company has been called out on this issue. Last April, the UK fined TikTok the equivalent of almost $16 million after officials discovered more than 1 million kids under 13 in the UK were on TikTok and their personal data was used without parental consent.
That means that their personal data may have been used to track them and profile them, potentially delivering harmful, inappropriate content at their very next scroll.
TikTok disagreed with their findings. Months later, Ireland did the same, and now the European Commission is looking into possible violations in France and Spain.
TikTok is by no means the only social media platform to be scrutinized for its child privacy practices. And in Congress, a growing number of lawmakers support changing current liability protections for social media companies so users or users' parents can sue for the harms committed on these platforms. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Atra, thank you. Car dealerships in North America continue to have disruptions following 2 cyber attacks last week of their software network. CDK Global, the company that was breached, said today they believe it will take several days before their systems will be fully restored. Over the weekend, CDK Global called this a ransom event. Bloomberg reports that CDK has plans to pay the cyber criminals who are believed to be located in Europe. Cybersecurity analysts suggest that buyers connected to CDK should have their credit monitored and be on the lookout for new phishing attempts to extort money. Coming up, the one key message the U.S. has for Israel when key meetings take place in Washington, D.C. this week. Then home prices are high, but the hidden costs are also hitting owners very hard. What you can do to help your wallet. And later, the forgotten towns where the long legs of the pandemic continue to hurt some communities. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant in Washington, D.C. tonight, slated to meet with a slew of U.S. officials, including the U.S.'s top defense and intelligence chiefs, along with Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The State Department said the meetings would all look to communicate a clear message.
The importance of Israel developing robust, realistic plans for the day after the conflict, plans that include path towards governance, towards security, towards reconstruction. He's going to emphasize the need to avoid further escalation of the conflict. And then he will, as always, emphasize the need to improve humanitarian access.
The trip expected to look at the next phase in Israel's nearly 9-month-long military campaign in Gaza. The meeting's coming a day after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the intense phase of war in Gaza was coming to an end, allowing for forces to shift focus to their northern border on militant group Hezbollah. The EU's top diplomat warning that the risk for war in Lebanon is higher than ever as skirmishes between the two sides grow in size and scope. Tens of thousands of people in Israel and Lebanon have fled their shared mountainous border as concerns grow of a full-fledged war. And tonight, nearly 21,000 children are missing in Gaza. That's according to British aid group Save the Children. In a report today, the group came out and said that thousands of children are missing, believed to be trapped beneath the rubble, buried in unmarked graves, lost in the chaos of conflict, and also include minors detained by Israeli forces. The numbers reported by Gaza's health ministry have not yet been independently verified. In your money report, the Biden administration rolling out a new plan to help address the nation's lagging housing supply. The administration has announced a new $100 million fund that will be created over the next 3 years. White House officials say they're working on a variety of offerings, including helping owners who have bought when rates were low and may be concerned with higher rates now.
President Biden made a proposal in his most recent budget that he would give $10,000 both to first-time home buyers looking for moderate price homes, but also to people who, as you described, are locked in their homes and need an incentive to sell them.
Another troubling sign for the housing market. Families already struggling to buy a home are now falling behind, just trying to maintain their house. The National Desk's Angela Brown joins us now with a look at the hidden costs of buying a home.
Buying a home is out of reach for so many Americans. Here's why. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the median home sales price is just over $420,000 for the first quarter of 2024. Danielle Hale, chief economist from Realtor.com, breaks down how much you need to make.
You need to earn over $100,000 in 34 out of the 50 largest metro markets to buy the typical home for sale.
But once you buy that home, the cost to maintain it is also going up. This new report from Bankrate found the average annual cost of owning and maintaining a single-family home in the U.S. is more than $18,000 a year. That is 26% higher compared to 4 years ago.
What hidden costs are we talking about?
So we're talking about things like property taxes, homeowners insurance, the electricity bill, the cable and internet, and then most importantly, is repairs and ongoing maintenance.
What's driving costs up? Inflation, rising housing prices, supply chain issues. Feeling this the most? Maybe first-time home buyers, because many long-term homeowners locked in mortgage rates when they were at 3%.
The home prices are near record levels. Mortgage rates are higher than they've been in decades. And so it's just a really difficult time to be a first-time buyer.
Right now, many young people are feeling like the American dream of owning a home is out of reach. A CNBC and Generation Lab Youth and Money in the USA survey found that 68% say housing is available but not affordable. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Angela, thank you. The American ambassador to Russia was summoned by the foreign ministry today. The ministry saying that the United States has effectively become party to Ukraine's war effort after the U.S. made a missile that was used to kill 4 and wound more than 150 in the Russian-annexed Crimea this weekend. Russia says that retaliatory measures will follow. Of course, it's unclear what those measures will be at this moment. Meanwhile, the death toll from yesterday's coordinated terror attacks in Russia hit 20 today. At least 15 police officers and a priest are among the dead. Militants targeted a synagogue and an Orthodox church in 2 separate cities in Dagestan. The buildings were burnt to the ground, with at least 46 people injured in those attacks. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you, from outrage over an animal shelter plan in California to police now wearing body cameras in a major Oregon city. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Seattle, Washington, where neighbors are fed up after the latest shooting.
It was on the 2nd floor of this apartment complex where shots rang out. Police said a 24-year-old suspect was inside one of the units shooting onto this parking lot. 2 men, a 37-year-old and a 28-year-old, were hit by the gunfire.
I really don't want that to happen. This is a very sad thing, when I heard these things happen.
Police say the suspect was hiding inside the apartment unit when officers got inside and arrested him. One restaurant owner tells me he worries about how the shooting will hurt his business.
People heard about it. They won't come to Canada anymore because of shooting.
Other residents like Patrick Kong, who lives nearby, says shootings are not surprising and worries about his safety.
I think in the daytime it's pretty okay because a lot of police patrolling and a lot of people walking around, right? So it's safer that in the daytime. But at night, I wouldn't dare to walk outside.
In this video, you can see a Fresno Animal Center employee release a large dog into a neighborhood. He takes a picture of the dog on his phone before getting back in his truck to leave. The dog looks around confused before walking away. This video, posted on June 6th, has since gone viral. In the original post, the person wrote, "Fresno City Council, please help. Fresno Animal Center is turning dogs loose on the streets. We understand the shelter is full, but this is no way to deal with the situation." A spokesperson for the city said in a statement, "Due to the overpopulation crisis, the city of Fresno has been focused on making every effort to successfully reunite animals with their owners. In cases where there is no indication of ownership, some healthy animals have been returned to the area where they were originally found. Studies show some stray dogs and cats are more often reunited with their owner when they are left in the area where they were lost."
This is a big step for us.
On Monday, Portland will be the last major city in the U.S. to have its police officers wear body cameras.
To get body cameras officially rolled out will be a big deal.
The high-definition cameras made by Axon will be used during most police encounters, from a simple scenario like someone asking for directions to a more serious event like an officer-involved shooting.
There's no chance that it could be altered or changed in any way.
In most cases, cops will be required to tell the person they are being recorded, but some can ask to not be recorded.
It builds community trust. These devices will show an unbiased view of a police interaction.
Up next, still struggling, the surprising areas where the pandemic remains a key concern. For many communities, the impacts of the COVID pandemic are in the rearview mirror, but others, especially those located on U.S. borders, are still struggling to recover. As Spotlight on America correspondent Chris Daniels reports, one remote Washington state town is concerned about a new federal requirement that could make things worse.
It is a pocket of the country rare in its geography and beauty. Why'd you choose to live in Point Roberts?
For us, it was about the kids.
Justin Brunswick and his wife are raising their children and a new litter of chocolate lab puppies here in Point Roberts, Washington, one of a few American penny exclaves, only accessible by land through Canada. A place where gas is sold by the liter. The local grocery store keeps 2 tills of currency, and evolving border restrictions have taken their toll.
It really shifted people's consumer habits, their behavior, and that impacted these cross-border economies that depended on that border functioning.
Dr. Lori Troutman is the director of the Border Policy Research Institute at Western Washington University and says northern border traffic volumes have dropped across the U.S. since the start of the pandemic, from Washington state to Michigan and New York. The small towns that rely on the tax revenue from tourism have felt the impact and are now bracing for a CDC guideline come August 1st requiring dog owners for proof of rabies vaccinations, microchipping, and recent travel history to cross the border. It would be just the latest complications for small towns on the northern border still trying to recover from the pandemic.
I think it's going to cause a lot of confusion.
So it's another deterrent to make that crossing.
Absolutely.
The dog rabies issue for pets, family pets, absolutely ridiculous.
Brian Calder is the Point Roberts Chamber president. He says this gas station just closed, faced with headwinds at the border and the exchange rate. The only grocery store is still hurting too.
We're not back to where we were in any way, shape, or form.
Store owner Allie Hayton argues certain rural communities should have a special exemption.
Some of those restrictions that they have coast to coast shouldn't apply here.
So many times, some of these regulations that are well-intentioned, that seem like a good idea, just don't actually end up accomplishing the thing that you're trying to accomplish.
Brunswick says he isn't sure yet how he will even navigate starting a potential breeding business or vet visits, since there is not one in this disconnected small border town. And while he, like others, value the relative peace and serenity of the point, they are still left to wonder, after a few painful years, if the feds will throw them a bone. In Point Roberts, Washington, I'm Chris Daniels for Spotlight on America.
Coming up, the hockey season will end tonight with a champion, the history that's on the line when the puck drops. Talk about beating the odds. The Oilers get yet another chance to make some history tonight against the Florida Panthers as they vie for the highly coveted Stanley Cup. When the Oilers beat Florida on Friday, they became only the third team in history to force a decisive Game 7. Just 4 teams have come back to win a series after falling behind 0-3. But only once has a reverse sweep happened in the Stanley Cup Finals, when the Maple Leafs rallied to defeat the Red Wings back in 1942. Should the Oilers succeed, they'll be the first Canadian team to win the championship in over 30 years. And the puck drops tonight in Florida at 8 p.m. Eastern. Something tells me a lot of folks will be tuning in for this one. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again for more coverage this evening on America's Top Stories. Just check your local listings for times. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.